Hi, you're on the Bible Forum. I'm Warren Sprouse. I want to talk to you about globalism. Did you know globalism is growing? It's growing worldwide. Over the past few years, voters around the world have rejected globalism in favor of nationalism. In the United States, Donald Trump ran on an America First agenda, and he became president. He promised to stop illegal immigration, pull America out of bad international agreements, change free trade deals for fair trade deals. But months earlier, voters in the United Kingdom opted to leave the European Union. It's known as Brexit, the British exit. And their decision to this day remains a thorn in the side of the global elite. They haven't done it yet. They can't get a vote. Recent elections indicate nationalism remains popular. In India, Hindu nationalist Prime Minister Narendra Modi won another term. Running on a pro-Hindu nationalist platform, India re-elected him in a landslide. In Great Britain, the Brexit Party, formed just a few months ago, finished first with 30% of the vote. With 29 seats, it's now the single biggest party in the European Parliament. In France, President Macron saw his party lose ground in the European elections to Le Pen's National Rally. Just 2 years ago, Macron handily defeated Le Pen in the presidential election. This time, her party won 23% of the vote, as opposed to 22% for Macron. In Italy, Matteo Salvini's nationalist party, known as the League, finished first with 34% of the vote. Throughout the EU, the same story played out over and over. Nationalist politicians scored stunning victories. Does all this mean the world is reversing its trend toward globalism? Will traditional nationalist policies become the norm? Probably not. Recent events significantly slowed the transformation, but the world is still trending in that direction. Despite recent setbacks, the globalist agenda is in a better position than it's ever been. And that's because young people embrace it. Young people are the future. The current trend is that while voters may reject the globalist agenda, this according to several surveys, future voters won't. These children will grow up. Globally, the millennials, those born between 1981 and 1996, outnumber the baby boomers and the Gen Xers. And they believe the concept of being a citizen of a single country is outdated. To them, global citizenship is the way of the future. In 2017, Western Union surveyed more than 10,000 millennials from 15 countries, including the United States, India, and Russia. What they found provides a glimpse of where we're heading in the years to come. Some of the results are 79% believe limitless movement around the world will empower them. 29% believe a single global currency will foster greater global unity. 61% believe global institutions like the United Nations are more representative of them versus national or local governments. In the 2016 Global Shapers Annual Survey, more than 26,000 millennials from 181 countries gave their opinions on world issues. 48% of millennials see climate change as the most serious issue the world faces. Yeah, 48%. Sound asleep. When it comes to solving global problems, respondents say they trust international organizations more than they trust themselves. Now, granted, it's only a 26 to 20% split, but there it is. 36% of the respondents view themselves as global citizens. It's a higher number than those who view themselves as national citizens, 22%, or members of a religion, any religion, 9%. Many young people see themselves as global citizens first. They think borders should be open. They believe climate change is the world's biggest problem. And they look to global political institutions for answers. This is what the world will look like in the future. And it's because millennial opinions will shape the world in coming decades. But what they will learn is that none of this stuff matters and none of it works. When all else fails, read the instructions. They will go back to basics. It's a pie in the sky sort of thing. Adolf Hitler once said, when an opponent declares, I will not come over to your side, I calmly say, your child belongs to us already. You will pass on. Your descendants, however, now stand in the new camp. In a short time, they will know nothing else but this new community. The globalists don't need to win today's elections because they've already won a generation of children. Only time will demonstrate to these children that what they've embraced doesn't work. Because of their attitudes, millennials will ensure 3 issues stay at the forefront of the political agenda. The freedom of movement. It's another way of saying open borders. Most people reject open borders because they understand a nation with open borders is no longer a nation. So the advocates of global government use the phrase freedom of movement. After all, who could be against freedom? But you can see firsthand how freedom of movement destroyed national sovereignty in the European Union. 48% of millennials view climate change as the top threat to humanity, despite the lack of evidence showing that mankind has anything to do with climate change. People still clamor for global solutions to the climate change crisis. These solutions typically involve massive tax hikes, loss of national sovereignty, a massive transfer of wealth and power to new global institutions. This so-called crisis is how the globalists hope to get nations, and the United States in particular, to cede power to them. As former UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon said, quote, climate change does not respect borders. It does not respect who you are, rich or poor, big or small. Therefore, this is what we call global challenges, which require global solidarity. You see, no nation can solve this problem alone. It requires global solidarity, which means going along with whatever it is the globalists want. And what do they want? Power. Give power to an almighty global government, and the globalists believe they can solve all the world's problems. This has been the long-held dream of kings and despots, but it's also the dream of the millennial generation. Thirdly, there's the whole idea of global government. Remember, when it comes to solving problems, millennials trust international organizations more than they trust themselves. So it makes sense to them to embrace global government. Not only is it seen as a solution for climate change, but for decades it's been seen as the only way to promote peace and end war. Albert Einstein said humankind's desire for peace can be realized only by the creation of a world government. Winston Churchill said, unless we establish some form of world government, it will not be possible for us to avert a World War III in the future. Many people believe this, and today they're actually working to form a single global government. The greatest challenge they face is convincing nations to give up their own power, sovereignty, to this new global community. Every year they come closer, and advanced technology only accelerates the process. We're talking about finances. Electronic banking has replaced currency in almost every business transaction. In North America, 30% of consumer purchases are made with cash. It's only a matter of time before paper currency disappears, and when it does, global transactions will become even more efficient. In business, free trade has led to global corporations and multinational conglomerates that span the globe. Their products and employees can be found in some of the most remote corners of the planet. With tools like Skype and FaceTime, workers can engage in real-time video conferencing from anywhere in the world. Face-to-face meetings are no longer necessary. Do you realize the growth of the virtual, I can't think of the other word, it's an employee. You get a job, but you don't go to work. You work from home. Also in the future, language is not going to divide us. The barriers are already eroding. Google has some program called Google Translate that allows people to speak different languages and thereby exchange emails and research papers. It's only a matter of time before you'll have a wearable device that offers instant translation of the spoken word. You speak to someone in English, they'll hear you in Japanese. They'll respond in Japanese and you'll hear them in English. When this happens, national and cultural barriers are going to erode even farther. When it comes to policing, governments can now compile large databases, easily share information with other nations. Tracking terrorists and other international criminals has never been easier, but spying on citizens has also never been easier. The spread of cameras and listening devices such as Amazon's Echo and Google Home, many of them willingly placed throughout people's houses, mean governments can easily spy on almost anyone they want. With the aid of artificial intelligence, cameras, and microphones, a global government could monitor and track every person on Earth. All these advancements make global government viable for the first time in history. While recent political developments show a backlash against globalism, all they've done is slow the inevitable march. So why should you care? You should care because we're on the cusp of a new era. Ever since the Tower of Babel, tribes and nation states have governed the world. Nations meant well-defined borders, language, culture. Many people dreamed of global government, but that's all it was, a dream. Of course, such a government would never work in reality. Local interests and values would triumph, and administering a global government would be an expensive bureaucratic nightmare. But this generation is tearing down all those obstacles with this hope. To the next generation, devotion to this global community is preferred over allegiance to one's home country. Concern over climate change trumps concern over local interest. They want national borders to be open or erased altogether. Advanced technology is making all of this a reality. It's creating a global marketplace, eroding language barriers, eliminating the need for geographic proximity. The globalist vision is becoming a reality. But this is exactly what the Bible said would happen in the end times. It is a very messy process. Think about the Muslims and others who have invaded Europe. Think about all of the folks coming up from South America through Mexico into our country. Think people who come into countries where they do not speak the language, they do not share the culture, they do not have a vested interest. They become a problem. They're not helpful. And if you have that all over the world, what will that look like? But the Bible talks about a time when there would be a powerful government dominating the world. Daniel chapter 7, verse 23. A government ruling over every person, every nation, every tribe, every language group. Revelation chapter 13, verse 7. Its power so immense, It will control every economic transaction on earth. No one will be able to buy or sell without its permission. Revelation 13:17. In the almost 2,000 years since John wrote the book of Revelation, such a government has been impossible. In fact, in John's time, people had no concept of the world outside the Roman Empire. But today we do. Today, not only is such a government possible, it may prove to be inevitable. No other generation of Christians could have said this. Ours is the first to live in a world where global government is possible. And it's just one more sign that Jesus is about to return. And this is what makes the Ocasio-Cortezes of this world viable. Now, I started off by saying this isn't going to happen. We're not going to craft a global government. It's not going to happen. There's too many problems with it. It won't work. But one day, it will. But it will work at the behest of an otherworldly power. Something outside the natural, the native power of a human being. That's what will make it work. And all these moving parts that we see moving us toward that direction, as much as it's never going to happen naturally, all of those moving parts will create structures and systems that will serve this one world ruler one day. That's how close we are to the end.